Okay, here we are. Let me adjust my lighting slightly. This is way too bright. I feel like a Martian here. And get this. This looks a little odd, but whatever. We'll make this work. Okay, everybody. Once again, we're trying this for the second time because this was a guest that I tried to bring to you on, was it Tuesday? I think it was, maybe Wednesday. And we had so many problems that it just didn't work. I mean, I thought we were having a great conversation, and I thought you guys were hearing it and participating in it, and it just something went wrong, and so uh, it didn't get broadcast to you. But once again, I would like to bring to the stage Tamuri Richardson. She's won several awards for a speech that she's created called Reinventing Yourself. And she's a survivor of domestic violence herself. And she does a lot of great speaking on women's empowerment and mental health and how to overcome bad relationships, betrayal, heartbreak, that kind of thing, and come out strong and proud on the other side. I think that she has a wonderful, wonderful message for you to hear. And that's why I wanted to make sure that we got her back. So, you ladies, get your questions ready. I'll be talking to the guests for a little bit, and then we'll start taking your questions on self esteem, how you can establish boundaries, maintain boundaries, what to do and say if someone challenges your boundaries, basically how you handle that. That seems to be an issue for many women. You just don't know what to do. So, Tamuri, why don't you just say hello to everybody, all the ladies in the listening audience, and you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Deborah, for having me. So, as you noted, I'm a professional motivational speaker. I'm also an author. I published my first book last year, 10 Steps to Becoming a Highly Effective Public Speaker. I'm also a member of 100 Black Women, the National Coalition of Black Women in the East Bay chapter in Oakland, California. I'm very proud of that. We do a lot of work with women's empowerment and help for young girls to help them have high self-esteem and moving forward productively in life. So that's who I am.
Oh, that's wonderful. I should probably look into joining that. So
Absolutely.
we be over there hanging out, me and you.
That's
This is
right.
well, tell me, how did you get, I remember when we were talking before, you were saying how you'd been in a situation in a marriage that wasn't very good and there was some abuse there. How did you go from that to being this strong, smiling? I mean, you could just feel the confidence exuding from you. What happened?
I did what I think every woman does. You get married, you think you found the person that you're going to be with for better or worse. I got married and found out 2 months later that he was a drug addict, and then found out 6 months after that he had been mostly struggling with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia for the probably for his whole life. And on top of that, he heard voices. So imagine marrying someone, not knowing these things. And although he knew he was a drug addict, I'm pretty sure he didn't know he was suffering from mental illness. So trying to navigate that and trying to still love someone, what I found myself doing was immersing myself in his treatment and his recovery. And so I wasn't focusing on who I was, who I had aspired to be. I was at his treatment 7 days a week and catering to him and catering to what his needs were, what he thought his needs were. And in the midst of that came a lot of domestic violence. There was a lot of verbal, mental abuse, an enormous amount. And I found myself from becoming a person who was confident, who was successful, and who had come into her own, that I was becoming a shrinking violet. I was
Oh,
starting to second guess myself. I no longer had the confidence to make a decision and stick to it because I figured, oh my God, I made this decision. It was so bad. I shouldn't make any others. And so it just really altered who I was and who I was becoming. And so when I started to do the shift and as the marriage started to dwindle, I realized that I'm not the only woman that's dealing with this type of a situation. And as strong as I was, it was attempting to bend me, never broken, but he was definitely bending me. I can only imagine for women that didn't have my level of tenacity, what this was probably doing to them and how I could reach out and support them.
oh, that's so wonderful. Yeah, the kind of way I feel too. I mean, I didn't go through anything like that, but I think our hearts are in a similar place.
Yes,
I mean, from my perspective, it's like, okay, you don't need to go through it to understand that it's not where you want to be. I mean,
absolutely.
you can see when other people suffer from something, you learn a lesson that from that, and then you want to take it and run with it and make sure that you and anybody else that you're in your sphere doesn't repeat that same mistake. So let's make a new mistake. Let's not do that one.
Absolutely. Fresh
So
mistakes.
let's talk about boundaries because it seems like a lot of women struggle with establishing those. I really really sometimes, girl, I'm telling you, I don't think they even know what it means to have a boundary.
Right.
And so it's like whatever the guy wants, or even people that are not their romantic partners, they tend to bend and flex and jump through hoops and do things to please everyone else at the expense of themselves and their own needs. What is at the core of that, do you think?
I think it's embedded in us as women, that especially women of color, because I grew up with four brothers, and so I understood the struggle that men of color have specifically in society, the consistent marginalizing of them, the consistent racism, the racial profiling, and all of those different things. So as we get older, we're taught to support our men, to love our men, because the world is so hard on them and it's so difficult for them out there. The problem is that while we're doing that, we're sometimes getting lost and forgetting that we need to be supported. We're dealing with different levels of the same things that they're dealing with, maybe not to that degree, but we are dealing with them. And to be very clear, and a lot of people don't understand this, all relationships require boundaries. You have boundaries with your boss at work, you have boundaries with your friends, romantic relationships should have them, siblings should have them, parents should have them with their children. As you get older, sometimes the parents don't know how to pull back and no longer parent you because your relationship is going into a whole nother spectrum. So it's important, but as women, when you are trained and you're taught that it's your job to cater to him because the world is so ugly and you have to be everything else, you can start to believe that and then think, well, I don't want to make a fuss about this because, he's getting it at work. Well, I don't want to get it when you get home. So it definitely, there has to be boundaries in every relationship.
Okay, can you explain what a boundary is from, from your work that you do and the presentations you make and all the women that you interact with? Give us some examples of what a boundary that a woman might have in a situation where she just meets a guy.
Okay. I think when you're number one, a boundary for me and for what I desire it to be is it has to be mutually beneficial for all parties. So a boundary can't be something where I'm benefiting from having all the control or he's benefiting from having all the control, but it works for the benefit of our relationship, our friendship, whatever the situation is, our worker and employee relationship to help us to be better. So when you are a woman and you're dating, maybe your boundary is I don't kiss on the first date. I don't have romantic relations until 90 days with that individual. Those are boundaries. Those are solid boundaries. And no one should be able to come along and say to you, well, I'm really feeling you. It's been 30 days. We should be. No, my boundary is 90 because I'm still getting to know you. I'm still getting to feel if this is a relationship that I feel can even go the distance. So allowing somebody to move your boundary back and to be very clear, I did that in my marriage. I set a boundary, but I kept letting him inch that boundary back each moment by moment. And after a while, there was no boundary.
Oh,
So it's important to stand firm in your convictions and to know what you will and you will not do. And let's be clear, if he can't jump to that, then he's not the person for you because there's plenty of men that have respect and integrity and don't have a problem with honoring the woman that they're with for you to be with someone who doesn't have a clue about it.
I think a lot of young women are very vulnerable to the pressure that they have somebody.
Right.
I mean, it starts when you're little. They start telling, oh, you're going to be so beautiful when you get older, and you're going to, what kind of husband you're going to have, and how many kids are you going to
Hmm.
have? And I can just imagine your wedding. And, so the programming to get with a man and make that an integral part of your life starts so young. I think a lot of women don't even question it. So here they are in a situation where they're surrounded by these kind of people. They don't have a relationship. They suffer a lot of anxiety and will
Right.
tend to just take really anybody. Do you have
Absolutely.
any suggestions for how young ladies can establish what it is that they need in a relationship and stay strong and focused on that, even though they may feel a little lonely or be getting these kind of criticisms from people?
Absolutely. Sometimes the thing that you need in a relationship is absence of one. And I think a lot of times
Mm.
broken people go to look for other people to make them whole. But if you're missing pieces in your puzzle, it's impossible for you to help make me whole. You don't have what I need because you're missing elements. So sometimes the best thing that you can do for yourself is take some time to decide what your career path is, what your goals are. When do you want to be married? What do you look for in a husband? I remember when I was younger, I had a list of about 30 things, all the things that my husband had to have. Now, of course, some of them were crazy, but nonetheless, it's starting from somewhere to know exactly what you want. And if you love yourself enough, and sometimes we shift and we deviate off of that, then you stand firm to, I want someone that's going to at least do 10 of these things. But if he's not even doing three of them, then you might as well be by yourself because you're going to be missing so many elements. But there's so many broken people that want someone to fix them, and it doesn't work that way. You have to be fixed first, and then you bring you to someone. That's for men and women.
What do you think is behind the sense of shame and embarrassment and lack of interest in almost being embarrassed, I guess, by seeking mental health treatment in the African American community? That just really, people just do not want to admit that they have a problem or that they need that kind of assistance.
Absolutely. I think when we were young, and depending on where you grew up at, and what community you grew up in, it was said that you were crazy. And so back then, crazy was bipolar, is what we call bipolar disorder today. Crazy is what we call schizophrenia today. And we're now learning that it's not crazy. It's a different way of thinking, and it needs to be aligned medically. But in our community, a community that has been struggling with so many things since the ending of slavery and keeping the family together and holding the family together, adding another polarity for us is something that I think as a culture has just been too much to handle. But as women, we definitely need to check ourselves. One of the best things that I did for myself after I got out of my marriage is I was riddled with anxiety and I was dealing with forms of depression, is I immediately went and talked to a therapist. Now, I didn't talk to him because I thought he was going to fix me. I didn't talk to him because I thought I was crazy. But what I understood was is that I was no longer operating the way I had operated before, and a
Mm.
huge trauma had just come in like a tsunami and had disrupted my life. And I needed someone who had no dog in the fight to sit down with me and say, this is how we're going to try to get you back on track. Let's start from the beginning and then work our way through. And so surely, over time, I was able to start to feel better and get myself back into a place where I was in control. And that situation was no longer controlling me. So we have to, if we love ourselves, we love our family members, we have to encourage mental health treatment, therapy. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It just means that you're smart enough to know that I need some assistance getting me back on track. It's that simple.
I agree. I just think, a lot of people's lives would be completely different if they stopped thinking that they could be healed by prayer or by, wishing and hoping and dreaming or ignoring it or trying to quote, shake it off and this kind of stuff. That means there's some very, people are dealing with some very heavy things, and a
Right.
lot of them need some serious professional help. Well, tell me about this. If you are in a relationship, because you said how you had to deal with some rather interesting abuses and issues with your husband, what are some of the things that a woman might run into that would indicate that a guy is abusive or has some mental health issues, and she might, you know she needs to be aware that this is what she's dealing with? I think a lot of people just don't know.
Right.
They don't know that this is what it is, and so they are trying to, love the guy harder or bend and flex to what he wants, not understanding no matter what you do, you can't fix that. But
Right.
since you've been there, you've lived it, I thought you could share some, in retrospect and reflection, you're like, okay, this was a sign. I didn't
Mhm.
know what that was a sign when I was seeing it, but
Right.
this is a sign. And share those signs with some of the ladies.
Absolutely. Hindsight, my signs runneth over. Hindsight, I guess there were signs everywhere. There were signs all over the place. But for me, and from talking to other professional women, what I notice is that we're so quick and so easy to give a man a pass. He comes with a good story, and it sounds like he might be the one. I think looking at his family structure is important. How he was raised is going to help tell you what type of husband he is. Look at his relationship with his children. If he hasn't seen his children in a while, I don't want to hear it's the baby mama issue. You
Mm.
love your kids enough, you'll fight for them. I have brothers, they fought in court, they did what they needed to do. So those are not good enough excuses. If he's a man that does not accept personal responsibility, this was a huge one that I personally didn't give it attention to. It was always someone else's fault as to why this happened. And looking at the way his family operated would have given me a lot of clues as to who and what. And listening to the horror stories, by then I was married, but listening to the horror stories kind of gives you an idea of who you're dealing with. It doesn't mean the person has to be perfect, but they have to be able to manage their lives. And if they're saying, I want to bring you into my life, well, how do you manage me in your life? And I'm looking at you, you don't have a job, you're not taking care of your kids, you're kind of flaking out on me a little bit. We have to look for the signs, as you stated, not want to give people a pass, because that pass can turn into a long-term hell that you didn't even know that you could be in. So it's important, if you see stuff, ask him questions. Bring that to attention. Ask his family questions. He shouldn't have a problem with you addressing things with his family unless he's hiding something. And then that's the biggest sign that you need to see.
I
Absolutely.
agree. I think sometimes women don't even realize, like, okay, so for me, when you get older, you can peep the games real early, you know what it means. So I'm going on a date with somebody, right?
Mhm.
He's supposed to pick me up, just say 7, because that's a good number. And then 7:30 comes and he's not there. No call, nothing. He might show up at 7:45, 8 o'clock. Now, a lot of women will still be ready and they will still go out with the guy at 8 o'clock.
Right.
Deb has already taken her clothes off and is fired up, written Netflix, and is into my Korean dramas, and don't bother me because
Right.
your window of opportunity has closed, my home skillet. And it's,
Right.
and it's, that's
Right.
it. That's
Right.
my boundary. And,
Right.
and you shall never, ever, oh, get this chance
Cross it
again.
again. Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Right. And that's a good boundary to have. Now, when you come to something like that, say, for instance, you're waiting for someone, the respectful thing for him to do is to contact you and say, hey, look, I'm running late. But I think when it comes to time, and this is probably because I'm so horrible with time, but when it comes to time, I think you never know what could have happened. And maybe someone's phone, they didn't have their charger, anything could happen. I would expect an apology, and I would expect it not to happen again. Now, if it happens again, either you really don't have interest in me or you don't have respect for me. Either way, it's a problem. But I think sometimes we have to allow people to show us who they are, as opposed to assuming we know, because maybe it's an honest to God mistake, or it was a mishap. But I totally understand what you're saying. But past one time, then no, you'll be at the restaurant by yourself, definitely.
No, I don't give them a pass. You know why? Because I'm like this. We all in our 40s, 50s, and
Right.
even beyond at this age. Okay, we all know to charge your phone, have an extra battery, have your car charger on.
Right.
Whatever you got to do to make sure that doesn't happen. And my thing, what I feel is from experience at this point, when a man is really into you and he wants to make sure that he does not mess up, he gonna do all kind of extra stuff to make sure he's on
Right.
time. He might be parked down the street 15 minutes
You're
early,
right.
and he gonna be waiting until it's a decent minute to come up to your door and not be like he's thirsty or something. But
That's right.
that's what I have discovered. And I have 3 brothers, and I've watched them observe the women that they were really interested in and that they later married. That's how they were. The
Right.
women they was just screwing around with,
Didn't care.
They show up when they got ready, not if they please, didn't call them,
Absolutely.
was just stupid. It was kind of embarrassing, you know,
Right.
what are you doing? It was embarrassing. I didn't like him doing that, but I
Right.
did notice that that is how they did it. And that based on what those 3 young men did and me witnessing that, I don't give men any chance. You either come straight and come correct or you don't come at all. And I just don't give them no chance.
And there is absolutely 100% nothing wrong with that thought process at all. At all, because you've created your boundary. This is what it is, and that's a boundary you don't have to communicate with him. It's
Mm,
just common sense and common knowledge. Either he does it, he doesn't do it, he know it, he doesn't know it. As you stated, we're all over 40 at this point, so everyone should know how to operate. You're 100% right on that assessment. Absolutely, I agree.
I just, it's like so many ladies, they just give these guys just way too much slack. I mean, what you said is
Absolutely.
true. I mean, things do happen. But I mean, by the time I hear from you, you better have been bleeding somewhere. You
And
better
bring
be in
traces of the blood.
traction. You know what I mean? I want to see some bandages and a surgical bill. And then I
Right.
might cut you some slack.
That's right.
Be like, oh, you
Absolutely.
poor thing. Are you okay? But
Right.
other than that, net later for you.
That's right. Right. And
About
good for you for having that stance.
I'm trying to tell you. What can we do now? A lot of the people here are parents,
Hmm.
and we have noticed and talked about the way that young girls perceive themselves and the stuff that they take from men. I do a weekly advice column, like people write in their letters, and I do the letters live on the air. Girl, I cannot tell you how depressing it is to see the stuff that these young girls take and want to call it a relationship.
Right.
So, since this is what you do,
Right.
what kind of tips might you have for women who are parenting daughters to kind of start getting them on track early, to have more confidence in themselves, more willingness to create boundaries and the strength to maintain them?
One thing I will say is that we are the mirror for our daughters. What you do, they will do. They will emulate every action if they see that you let a man disrespect you, yell at you, hit you. If they see that, it becomes ingrained in their brain that this is what a relationship is. I have 2 children. I have a son, he's 14, and a daughter is 13 now. And one of the reasons why I had to make an exodus out of the marriage was that I was the example to my daughter of what a woman is. And she's known me to be strong, vibrant, intelligent, prosperous. And I had taken all of that and diminished it down. And I understood that she's going to emulate her mother. And if she's seeing me deal with someone who doesn't have adequate respect for not only me, he has no respect for them. He obviously has none for my kids. She will pick up a man just like the man that I was getting ready to get rid of. She'll pick
Oh
up the
no.
exact same type of man. And that for me was unacceptable. So, loving my kids to the degree that I do, there was no other option, but he had to go.
Why do you think it's so hard for women to leave situations like that? I'll get to your question in a second, Ash. Well, I mean, what's behind the inability or the unwillingness to leave when someone is hurting you?
I don't know, but I think for me, everyone's different. Marriage, I grew up with marriage being something that was sacred, and that you don't get married, you don't get divorced unless there's adultery that gets brought into the equation, and that you love and support. And also being so, well, now I'm trained in the mental health realm. At that time, I wasn't. I understood he had other things that were plaguing him. I understood he was dealing with the substance abuse, which is a disease. I did understand those things. So what I kept doing is saying, okay, I know he just cussed me out and called me 4 B's, but I'm going to overlook it because he's got mental problems. I'm going to
Oh,
overlook this because he's got mental problems and I know he's not in his right mind. That's the degree and the kind of behavior that I was dealing with. And I think as a woman, and when you're married and you love someone and you want to help them, you want to believe that you can love that hurt away and you can love them back to where they need to be. But women soon find out that those men stray and end up with other women. That the relationships get worse because if it's not in their heart, there's nothing you can do. So you can only really work with you as a person. And there's some women, I know some women that have to have a man. It doesn't matter if
Yeah,
he
what is
works.
that?
It doesn't matter if he works, if he read, if he can write. All he has to do is to be a warm body. And I assure you, all he is a warm body. But that's the nature of some people. And I'd have to assume that that has to do with their family histrionics. And that's something that they have to deal with because that's hard to get past that. But there are a lot of women out there like that. It's unfortunate. It's a lack of love for oneself to give someone so much value in your life and to give you so little.
That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. It's by W.C. Fields. And he says, if at first you don't succeed, try again, then quit. There's no sense of being a damn fool about it.
Right. That's right. That's a good quote.
I love it. I just
That's
love
right.
it. Give
But
it
you
your
have
all,
some women that
try, and then
they
stop.
don't have the confidence that they'll get someone else. And when you are in that, and not only that, but there are a lot of individuals who are narcissistic, and I don't want to make it seem like there are a lot of women that are the opposite side of this for men, to be clear. So this is not about bashing men, it's just we're talking about supporting women.
Right.
But there are some individuals who are narcissistic in how they operate, where the glory and the focus has to be on them. And they take that time to mentally train their spouses or girlfriends on how they are to feed into their narcissistic ego and that's
Jeez.
a full-time job.
I wish somebody would. Don't depend on me to feed your ego because you will starve to death.
Right.
You,
Ego just hungry.
girl, just empty, just laying up there anorexic. Okay, we have a question from you from Ash. She says, are flexible boundaries important if you are dealing with someone who is decent and respectful? Can two people successfully negotiate boundaries?
I think absolutely. Now, flexible boundaries depends on what you feel can be flexible. So your spouse not cheating, not cheating and being disloyal, that shouldn't be a flexible boundary. There's so many reasons why that shouldn't. But I think there are certain things that you can say, okay, look, if we need to look at this again, then let's have a conversation about it if this doesn't work and we need to alter this boundary that we've created. Maybe the boundary is an in-law or it's what we're doing with the children or something of that nature. I think you can, and I think adults can have successful relationships with boundaries. Boundaries is created so that, as I stated before, there's a mutual benefit and both parties are leaving with the feeling of a win-win and that it's productive for both. So I think keep communicating, and even if it looks like a boundary is not working, communicate again and create another boundary that's going to work, that's going to be fair for both parties, but it's definitely possible.
Hmm. I think I would prefer, Ash, from my perspective. I was thinking about it while you were talking. I think I'd rather use a different word. What word? I'm not sure. Guideline, maybe. Um, I don't know.
Right.
Because to me, boundaries are like it's like a brick wall. You ain't gonna do this. You ain't gonna treat me like this.
Hmm.
I'm not gonna tolerate this. We ain't doing this.
Right.
And then the other stuff that's flexible is like, I don't know, a different, I don't know. I'd have to give it some thought. This, just spur of the
Maybe
moment.
parameters,
I don't know,
different
I didn't have to get it.
parameters.
Yeah, something like that
Right,
instead of
right.
firm boundary. Because to me, boundaries are firm and
But
in stone, and that's just it. Like if you cheat and I'm leaving, you cheat and you have a baby outside, I'm gone.
right,
You cheat and you bring some disease, I'm out of here, and I'm gonna beat you to half to death before I go.
fair enough.
This kind of stuff. I mean, those are my boundaries.
Right,
But so those things to me are not flexible. I
right.
I can't see where I would
But a
be. Maybe
boundary
that's just
can
me though.
But a boundary can also be where you are in life. So, say for instance, you get married when you're 20 years old, and then you look at the boundary again at 30. Maybe a boundary that you created at 20 doesn't work for you at 30. Maybe you do have a boundary that there's no cheating, and then you add a third party to your situation. That's skipping and moving that boundary up. You can no longer hold the person accountable to that because you've just opened up the gates on it. So, I think that there
Mm,
is a place for as you grow, but it has to be mutual. The other person has to feel that they're getting something out of it. Now, if it's just a boundary that you're benefiting from, well, then that's not a boundary at all. That's just someone changing the whole scheme of things, and that's unfair.
Yeah, they changed the game. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's something to think about. That was a very interesting question, Ash,
Right.
and something I just never really thought about.
Right.
I see you had thought about it, though. You got all the answers, girl.
No, not at all.
So what can we do though? No, say we had this little girl, this little daughter, and you notice she's very skilled at certain things. She's a great artist. She's very, considering that she's 4, 5, 9 years old, fabulous dancer. She's got, great, I don't know, memory. She's creative. She can write, paint, draw, whatever. How
Right.
is it that by the time girls hit their preteens, they lose that confidence in themselves and they start to downplay their abilities and their skills and things in order to not seem they kind of dull their shine.
Right.
Why? What can we do as women that are in their sphere, their aunts, their big sisters, mothers, stepmothers, grandmothers, whatever, to help them keep that and then like, embrace it and cherish it and become even greater? Do you have
Right.
any ideas for these for people who are parents?
Well, I definitely think that you need a village around all of your children, but
Mm.
especially young girls. And anyone having young girls, it's important to have a male presence, whether it be a grandfather or uncle. These are the men that are going to set the stage and the example for the men they're going to look after. The father you pick for your daughter is the man she's going to pick. So if you go
Oh,
pick
no,
someone
wait,
off of the street
stop. Say
corner,
that again. Say that again.
the
That needs
man
to be
that
written on a t-shirt.
right. The man that you pick to be the father of your daughter, that's the type of man that your daughter is going to decide to be with. But that's the example that you're giving her. So if you pick someone up who's lazy, if you date or have children with someone who's doesn't have the abilities to be a good father, you know all of this stuff beforehand. This is the example that you're giving to your daughter of who I want to see you with. This is the type of man I want you to end up with. So it starts there. And if you don't have that, then it's important to get them examples. Girls are going to look, unfortunately, for that void to be filled. We already know that. So if there's no father in place, then make sure there's a good uncle in place. There's a grandfather in place. Those are the things. As I was growing up with my brothers, I was always taught how special I was and important I was, and I was always uplifted and made to feel great. So I grew up with a great sense of self. So I didn't fall into traps. So when the boys told me stuff, it meant nothing to me. I was already hearing this at home, and I don't
Mm.
know you, and I don't trust you anyway. So it's important that they feel confident and letting them know that confidence and intelligence doesn't come with beauty. It comes with intelligence. It comes with education. So they focus on the right things. And as they're growing up, your beauty is an enhancement to what's in your mind. If you have nothing here, trust me, this gets you nowhere. And those are things that we need to make sure we are consistently drilling in our kids' head. I do it to my daughter all the time, letting her know how important she is. She's a straight A student. She's very intelligent, very astute. Her father adores her. She has a great relationship with her father. And she understands, even with the snafu of me marrying someone challenged, I sat her down and explained to her that you see the man who your father is, and you see who this man is. This was an unfortunate mistake. Your father is the man that you should emulate as you moving forward. And we had a deep discussion on why my second husband was bad business, and he's a cautionary tale, and we move forward.
And so you were very like open and honest and upfront with her.
Oh, absolutely. They hadn't seen a lot, but they'd heard a lot, and they could tell my emotions was off because I was consistently unhappy. So for me to assume that we're living in the same house and they don't know that something is going on with their mother would be me downplaying their level of intelligence. So I apologized profusely to them when I was divorced from him to let them know that I apologize for not vetting this properly and for bringing someone into your life and not knowing he didn't have the tools needed to be what we needed him to be. And I never badmouth him, even in all my speeches where I tell my story. I don't badmouth him because I do believe some of it he could not prevent. So I don't make him the villain. What I do is explain to them how I needed to focus more on myself. I made a bad choice, and it's a choice that shan't happen again.
Shan't. It
Shan't.
shan't. Well, tell me this. When we start talking about, um, men and the vetting thing, you just mentioned it. So this kind of
Right.
feeds off of that. When you first meet a guy and you're going out with him and stuff, part of that vetting process, do you have any tips for a woman to identify when a man is controlling and could head towards being abusive? They're going
Right.
to test you in little ways before they actually go full Monty on you.
Right.
So do you have what kind of things in retrospect could you have noticed that would have been warning signs and red flags?
That's a great question because one of the things that would play back into my head is when we were dating and we were having a conversation about something he was supposed to do. And he screamed at me. It was no reason. It had he was yelling at me, but it had no basis in the conversation. It brought no value. And at that time, I thought to myself, okay, this is kind of weird. But that was the first sign that he's somebody that doesn't have control of his emotions. And I should have caught on to that. And I didn't caught on that. And let me just say that the person that I ended up marrying was someone I had dated years ago. So for me, I think overlooking some things was a comfortability that I had with him from my past that I
Mhm.
brought to the present, not realizing in the present, this is a whole different person from who this was back in the day. So I think looking at it, they're always in a rush. How they communicate with you, if they're having a conversation and they're trying to disrespect you or talk down to you or questioning you a lot. So uh, asking you a question and then asking that question to death after you've answered it, it's enough, or trying to make you feel stupid with certain questions. Those are usually people that tend to have some narcissistic behavioral traits, and you want to be able to pick that out initially so you won't end up going into something graver with this individual. But looking for their communication style, their tone, if they're agitated all the time, those are good qualities. If they're on their phone all the time, you can't sit at the table, have a conversation with me and not be on your phone. That's a problem. That would be a problem for me. Unless you Bill Gates, you could put that on silent. Yeah. You could probably turn it off.
Uh-huh. Nobody would miss you.
Would miss. Right.
Wow.
Absolutely. So
Okay.
yeah,
Those are good
there's a
ones.
lot of things. Yeah, definitely that I think women overlook and ends up getting us in trouble because we want to see husband potential and not realize that it's really only boyfriend potential that you're talking to and that you're looking at.
Yeah, I be trying to get them to understand, people, the traits that make somebody a good boyfriend are not necessarily those that make one a good husband.
Not at
Because, we
all.
want our boyfriends to be all exciting and cute and fine and fun and all this kind of stuff, bring the heat and all this.
Mhm.
But, when you get married and you talking about somebody being a father and a husband and, dealing with your family and being
Right.
there as a solid individual, all that cute and fine and hot stuff. I mean, you
Yep.
might be lucky to get some of that balance with the other things, but usually you have to those go out the window because you're looking for
Right.
something else.
You
And I think a
should
lot of
be.
women can't make that adjustment. They stay focused on, what he
Visuals.
looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then you end up finding out that you got with something and someone that doesn't have the capabilities to be, if not all things, anything other than who he is right now. And that's important that we look at as women. And like I was stating before, the relationships that a man has with his mother, I found that a lot of men, and not everyone, so please don't quote me on that, but a lot of men that I either know personally, definitely him. They come from traumatized situation where there aren't mothers or lucid mothers in the picture who are actively responsible and focusing and nurturing and loving their sons and teaching their sons how to love, respect, and care for a woman. And when you don't have that, that's the biggest part of a man, is what his mother gives him. The father is important, but the mother gives him the stuff that he's going to give his wife. And if she ain't gave him nothing, he ain't got nothing to give you.
Oh boy. Well, at one point I used to say, I had so much drama with the mothers of different men I dated and stuff. I said the next man I get with, I want him to be an orphan. I don't want him to have I don't want him to have a mama at all. I want to be hatched from an egg.
Right. You don't want them to be hatched.
Girl, I'm just telling you, I just was so through these
Right,
mothers,
right,
especially the ones who were the mothers of one child, and that son was the one child. Those boys were fools. Their mamas
right,
were crazy. And
right.
after that, I said, okay, no more only children as a boy. I'm
Right,
not
right.
doing it.
Or the favorite child. It can be very difficult. But if you're looking at which one is more harmful, I'd rather him have a mama that thinks that we gonna both share him as opposed to a mama that doesn't care because he's coming with so much baggage. I think if you find a man that loves you enough and he has this glue stuck relationship with his mom, which I think is awesome because he loves her and respects her. So chances are he's going to do the same for you. You can create that thing we're talking about again, boundaries. And we got
Mhm.
to get your mama in boundaries because this is where she needs to be. This is where we are. You can create that. But if there is no relationship, it's hard to come and bring something where there is nothing. You could put stuff in check, but if there's nothing there, there's nothing there.
Yeah, my youngest brother is my mother's favorite child.
Yeah, there's
Man,
some of
he
those in my
he
family.
would come and get her because she was retired, whatever, and he has his little house in DC. He's an attorney, and he
Mhm.
had like a room for her in her house, and he would
Right,
fly her out there, and she would stay out there for like 3 or 4 months and
right,
all this stuff in her room. I'm like,
right,
what is this? What is this? I mean,
right.
how are the rest of us supposed to compete with that?
You will not.
Exactly. So I just gave up. I'm like,
Right,
whatever.
right.
You can just have your
Absolutely.
favorite child. I don't
That's
care.
it. That's it. It's too late now. Who cares?
I know. Well, this is really good. I'm really glad that you were able to, swing back by. And I really still don't understand what happened to our other interview because I'm telling y'all,
Right.
it was hot. It was on fire. We were smoking. But
Right, right.
this is really good, and we did cover a lot of the same conversation because I wanted to make sure that they got a chance to meet you,
Yes.
and to hear your what your story is and your about your platform. So why don't you give them a few words? As we close out here, you tell them where they can find you,
Okay.
and maybe for those who are in the California area, maybe hear you speak or something.
Absolutely. So my website is www.tleannspeaks.com. That's TLEANN speaks.com. Also, I always put my number out there, 707-394-4367. And again, I speak on an assortment of topics. I do presentation, coaching, and mentoring for companies and private individuals. I do domestic violence keynotes address, mental illness, the stigma in the Black community and all communities generally, and women empowerment. I also do social issues. I'm getting very much so involved in the whole political realm. So I've had the privilege of speaking in front of the Senate in Sacramento. And my whole goal is that I'm looking to inspire and encourage women, not just to not go through what I'm going through, because everyone's still going to follow their own route. But know
Hmm.
that if you do decide to stay in something that might, excuse me, not be advantageous for you, when you decide to make your move, there's a whole nother world waiting for you. So it's a matter of when you do it and decide to do it. Again, my website, I will have a list of, I'm going to be putting out my calendar in the next week of women's conferences I have in April. And also being a member of the National Coalition of Black Women, we do a lot of wonderful things in the East Bay area, in California, Oakland, Richmond, Vallejo, all those different areas, to support our community of Black women and young girls to help them to be better. So if you're looking for a speaker, reach out to me. If you're looking for personal coaching or looking to see if I've got something coming up, give me a call. I'd be more than happy to talk to you and let you know where you can see me next.
Oh, you were just a doll. This is great. I
Thank
want to thank you for coming and being such a positive, powerful voice for women. I wish you the very, very best. I think you do great. You don't need me. You be all right.
thank you so much, Deborah. Thank
You are
you.
this is really good. So thanks a lot, and I will talk to you soon. I'm gonna try to run into you at one of these meetings.
That's right. Absolutely.
Okay,
Have a
girl.
good
I'll
day.
talk to you later. Bye
Okay,
bye.
bye-bye.
All right, you ladies and gent. I guess there's one guy in here today whining as usual. That's what they do. Anyway, I am so happy that she came back through. I hope that those of you who are raising daughters got some really good tips for what you can do to kind of make sure, stay focused on the language that you use when you're talking to them. The things that they say that might mean that they're, they're losing confidence, that something has happened. Someone has said something to them that you need to start addressing and correcting before it becomes too deeply ingrained and their self-esteem becomes impacted. As a parent, you got to stay hooked into your kid's mind. Stay hooked into what they're saying and how they're feeling about themselves. Okay, and then do everything that you can to make sure your child knows that you love them and that you got their back and that you think that they're the most fabulous little child walking on two legs. That doesn't mean to say that you are never going to correct them, because that's false parenting too, to think that your child never does wrong and all that stuff. Then they grow up with a sense of entitlement in one of these 5-letter groups online acting a fool. You don't want that either. But you do want your child to be able to realistically assess when they've done something that's not, not the best, but to be able to be resilient enough to make it past that, to not let that one mistake, that one thing that they did wrong, bad, poorly, whatever, take them down. That's the kid that you want. They can bounce back and still have their self-esteem and confidence intact and go on and tackle the next challenge and be successful at it. That's what you have to do. Being a parent is a tough job. It's a very, very tough job. I think a lot of people don't take it seriously enough, but I want you guys, I will be tying all of these loose ends up tomorrow, but this is just another cog in the wheel of the focus on you being the best you that you can be, the best parent, the best mother, the best wife, the best girlfriend, the best single woman on her grind for herself that you can be. There's no judgments here about what path you choose to take. I just want to provide you with the information and the tools, the guests, the resources to be the best person that you could ever possibly be. I know it was 30 days of it. It was a lot of information. There's a playlist for all of this, so you can go back and listen to each video if you need to. You can hear them in sequence. And tomorrow, the weekend is 4 p.m. Pacific. That's 7 if you're on the East Coast, and that's 6 if you're Central Time. Okay. So 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 Central, 7 Eastern. And we'll be here. I'm trying to wrap it up about, you know, not at 6, 4. 4 on Saturdays. I do the shows earlier on the weekend. And I'm going to, tie everything up to in loose, all the loose ends, answer any last questions you have. And then it'll be hasta la vista, baby, to February 2020. Okay. So as usual, you guys are like the best audience ever. I don't think I could ask for a better crew. So affectionately yours. I will see you all tomorrow. You guys enjoy your evening. Bye-bye.